All right, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the Cornfield Customs channel. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the roof panel that I'm going to be shaping on the power hammer for Cadillac Lasalle. So this will be what will be the passenger side half of the catwalk and the rear roof section. So I put up some pictures online, like on Facebook and Instagram, of the pattern layout and then everything transferred to the metal, and it brought up some good questions that I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about before I get into the initial shaping. So let me bring the camera in a little bit closer and we'll go over detailed explanations of what all my labeling means and how it's going to affect the shape of the panel. So let me get that moved in here. So just like with everything, I made a pattern, and this is the pattern of the driver's side section of the roof. And I've used sweeps and radius gauges to determine what the radius is in our low crown area. That'll all be shaped with radial stretch on the power hammer. So if you haven't watched any of my other videos about the types of stretching and radial stretch and linear stretch, check those out. But this will just be a refresher course. So we'll have, say, a 36-inch lower radius. So it has a 36 radius in every direction across the bottom die. The top die will be completely flat. As it comes down and makes contact, it spreads that load out in every direction, shaping it over that lower 36 radius die. And we will slowly increase that to get our 36-inch radius. Same thing over here in the 24. We'll use a 24-inch radius lower tool, and then we'll kind of blend back and forth to get them to flow seamlessly. So with this being our pattern, like I said, this was the one for the driver's side. So to transfer all this information accurately for the passenger side, all I do is I flip it over. So we use the same pattern for the left and the right, or the driver and the passenger side. It just gets flipped over. And you can see there's a little bit of extra material all the way around. I do that so I have a little bit of wiggle room and nothing comes up short. So I add about 3/4 of an inch all the way around my pattern. So looking at our blank here, we'll just talk for a couple minutes about the initial layout and how it's going to affect things. So I already talked about our low crown shape here on our 36 and our 24. This is the back window opening, and this is kind of the catwalk area and tie into the roof. So what is going to create the majority of our shape is going to be our shrinking. So on here, I hope you guys can see it, I have do these first, which is our side shrink. So when I come in here and I shrink to these points, it'll gather the material, make it thicker, but that'll pull it over this way and this way. And that's what'll get us that nice arc around the quarter window and get our main roof profile set in place. So that's why I want to do these first. You know, like I said, we'll come in and shrink everywhere there's a shrink line, and then we will fade that back. So we'll do in between, working our way out towards the edge of the material. Get that kind of set, test fit it to the car, and then we can come back and we can come in to these shrink marks that kind of bring everything up into the compound shape that flows across the middle of the roof. So I want to do this side first to get the majority of our overall shape roughed in, and then I can come in and kind of fine tune this. That information was found by using paper to make the pattern of the roof. It shows us everywhere a shrink mark is by having too much material of the paper laying around. So, you know, when we make our paper, and it comes together, there'll be a tuck in the paper to get it to lay nice and flat. That signifies our shrink area. I do have some other videos talking about paper patterning on a Model A quarter, and I think there's a couple other ones. So make sure to check that out if you're more curious about paper patterning and how to figure out what is a shrink versus what is a stretch, and the proper way I like to lay out my patterns. So I'm gonna get the power hammer set up, and we will come in, do our first initial shrinks here on the side, test fit it to the car, and kind of see where we're at. So hopefully that's a better understanding of why I lay it out the way I do. Some of the questions I got, you know, were what do the lines mean? What does SH mean? Do I have to do all of this shrinking just to get the 36 radius and then all of these lines get cut back off later? No, all of this material for the most part is going to stay, other than just some fine trimming on the edges if I need to remove any excess material that I've left. So what you see is what is going to stay for the most part, and our shrinks are going to help create our radius and our low crown is going to help flow into our more aggressive shaping from the shrinking. So let's head over to the power hammer, get it all set up, and I'll show you the process from start to finish. So I've got the hammer set up with our thumbnail shrinking dies. So we've got the male die on the bottom, the female die on the top. And again, in some of the other videos, I talk about how a thumbnail shrinking die works. As the material comes through, it's going to put a tuck in the material, and as it comes back out, it's going to gather that tuck in on itself, gathering and thickening the material, which creates our shrinking. So I've got that set up. We'll raise this post back up. We'll spin that around by hand, make sure we've got our tool gap set up, which I like about 3/16 of an inch to 1/4 inch of tool gap at the bottom of our stroke. And right now we're at about 3 on our stroke gauge, so it's going to hit a little bit harder than halfway through our stroke settings. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit because we are working in 18 gauge cold finish steel today, so it's going to need to work a little bit harder to get that tuck closed and back to nice and smooth. So let me get our stroke turned up, I'll grab our panel, and we'll get to shaping. All right, so we're all set up, ready to shape. I've got my leather shaping apron on because this is going to be a larger panel, and I'm going to have to use my body to help support the panel as I shape, and I don't want to get any cuts through my clothing into my skin, so I've got my leather apron on just to help protect myself. All right, so I'm here at the car after our first initial set of shrinks, and you can see that with our shrinks, this shape is more than what the roof profile should be, but also this isn't as tight of a radius because I can put my hand under here. So what needs to happen next is I'm going to correct the form on the wheeling machine with a rubber upper die and the proper radius lower die to match the roof, which is 8 inches. And I'm going to use the rubber die because the rubber is not hard enough to do any shaping work. So the 8-inch lower die is going to push up into the rubber, allowing me to adjust the form. So we can adjust the form, we can put it in, we can take it out, we can do all of those things to correct and help the shape flow better. So let me head over to the wheeling machine. I'll put the 8-inch radius lower tool in it, and we will adjust the form and see if that pulls it around, kind of check progress, and from there we can adjust and go back to shaping as need be. So I'm here at the wheel. Just like I said, we put the rubber coated upper wheel in. So this just has about 1/2 inch to 5/8 thick, I'd say a medium diameter rubber. And then we have our 8-inch lower anvil or die in here, and that'll allow us to press that 8-inch radius into the rubber, allowing us to correct the form. So with doing that, I am going to follow our light line, and I don't have a ton of pressure on here yet because all we're doing is correcting the form. We're not trying to get a ton of aggressive forming going in, just a little bit of correction as we go. All right, with our panel back on the car, you can see just how adjusting the form has made a big difference already. It still doesn't fit perfect to the inside of our buck structure here, and you can see it's all kind of still up over there. But we're still in the beginning stages of the shaping process, so I'm not too worried about getting it to clip fit just yet. So here you can see that this is a little high, but I can grab it with my thumb and kind of push it down, and it moves a little bit on both sides of that high spot. So this edge is just a little loose, but when we come in with our radial stretch, it'll help tighten that up, because by stretching this, it will simulate almost like a shrink at the edge. It'll add more material here to tighten that edge up. And then we can continue to blend across here. You can see it's super flat, and we need that radius. I'm not focusing on our shrinks up here yet, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. You know, I don't want to come in and shrink that and then have too much shape put in it and have to take it back out. So I'm going to come in here with a 36-inch lower tool, start to put our initial shape in, blend all of that over, and that should allow this to fall and kind of relax, because you can see it's hitting here in the middle of our panel on both sides. And while I'm doing that, I'll come in and I will run this area where we shrank to help blend out all our shrinking marks and get it in more of a relaxed state and a smoother surface to kind of see where we are, so we're not being held up by any kind of knots from where our shrinks are stacked. So let me get the power hammer set up to do our radial stretching with a 36-inch lower tool on the bottom and our flat die on the top, and we'll get to blending all of this out and putting our initial radial stretch in the panel. All right, so we're all set up and ready to roll. I've got a little panel lubricant that I'm going to apply to the panel. I didn't do that during the shrinking process because it doesn't affect it the same. If you don't have a lubricant when you're radial stretching, it tends to get a little gummy. So I'm going to apply this lubricant, which is 50-50 ATF and mineral spirits, just in the areas we're going to be working, and then we'll get to shaping. So I came in and I just trimmed a little bit off the bottom here where I've got what is the underlaying panel now, where the transition into the catwalk area is. I've still got about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of overlap on there. So I just trimmed this off, that way it wasn't getting hung up past this break like I mentioned. So trimmed that a little bit, trimmed off the front, and you can see that it's touching here and it's up in the air here and up in the air here. So if I come in and push there, to get that down flat, it pushes up where our shrink marks are here on the top front edge. So that's the next thing I need to do. Come in, just shrink this a little bit, tighten everything up, and see how it looks. It looks like it's going to need just a little bit of shrink. So with the thumbnail dies, you're kind of limited. You usually have a large, medium, and a small set. So we're going to see what I can do. I might have to over shrink this and then stretch it back out, depending on how aggressive the shrink is versus how much we actually need. So like I said, this fits pretty nice. The flow is good. It's just kind of being held up and twisted by needing this extra shrink here at the front. So head back over to the power hammer and we will shrink this down and see how it looks. All right, let's see what we got. So just laying it here, not clecoing it back in with a few reference clecos. Just line it up close to where our hole was. You can see that it's a little bunched up here, but if I just kind of lightly push down, everything kind of falls into place. It's a little high here, but that's where our shrink stopped. So the next step is to go back to the power hammer with radial stretch dies and blend all of this out and get it nice and flat. I'll use the 36-inch radius lower with a flat upper, just like our pattern and our blank calls for. So that's the next step, is back to the power hammer to blend all this out. Well, there we have it. The panel is roughed in, and from this point moving forward, I need to spend a good amount of time planishing and refining the shape. Like I said, at this point, it's only roughed in, so I still need to come back and trim some areas. You know, I need to shrink just a little bit here to get this to pull in, and there's just a lot of planishing to raise any minor low spots. There is a low spot right here in the corner I need to bring up a little bit and kind of blend down the sail panel and just really refine the overall shape and surface finish to make it a finished part. But this was mainly about just roughing in the shape, getting it to flow and fit to about 75%. So that's about where we are right now, and I'm going to take it probably up to about 95% before we get to the point of trimming it and fitting it to the car for welding. And then we will finish that last little bit. Once it's all welded, we'll planish it on the car, or we'll take the whole roof off and planish it on the bench. But that last little bit of perfect fitment will be once things start to come together right before we weld it, because we're still overlapped on our side panel, we're overlapped on our roof, which is also being overlapped by the side panel. We're overlapping the back window and this piece that ties into the catwalk. So there's a lot of different variables that are making this not fit perfect yet, as well as just needing to finish planish it. So I'm gonna wrap up this episode and get back to planishing. I'm not gonna really film it just because it is long, drawn out, and you don't see a ton of changes in a video. You can feel the difference, and you can see the panel when it's final planished and burnished. It's a little bit more reflective and you can see the light. So I might do a follow-up video when I get to that point and just show you what the finished piece looks like before I move on to something else. But I'm not gonna film that whole process, like I said, just due to it being boring. But I'm gonna wrap this one up. I wanna thank you guys so much for checking out this video, some of the other metal shaping videos, as well as the race car projects. So thank you guys so much, and drop down in the comment section, let me know what you think, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.